Hello, food service family and friends. My name is Juan Martinez. I'm principal in Profitality Labor Guru Consulting Company. We specialize in the application of industrial engineering and ergonomics principles in food service. What we aspire to do is help brands become more efficient in order to drive better unit economics, more sales, throughput capacity, lower capital, and operating costs. Today, in the midst of this pandemic, I've invited Carlos Espinosa, our consulting manager, to provide some insights on his experience being a subject matter expert in the area of off-premise, and provide you some ideas on how you could pick up your fair share of off-premise, which has significantly grown in these periods, because that's pretty much what it's all evolved to, and it's likely to continue to grow in the future. So, hello, Carlos. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Juan. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. Thank you for taking your time here. Before we start, do you mind, Carlos, giving a little bit of a snippet on your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an industrial and systems engineer by trade. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree from Florida National University, in addition to certifications in lean production and Six Sigma. I've been working as an industrial engineer for about 11 years in the service industry, with 10 of them being in food service. So with that in mind, I want to take a little bit of time today to share with you an industrial engineer's perspective on the off-premise topic today.
Excellent, excellent. It's gonna be great for the listeners to hear what you've got to say. So why don't we get going? Here's the first question I have for you. As I stated in the opening, off-premise is king. It rules. It's gone from high to highest. So how are the brands that are succeeding? What are they doing that's different, that allows them to be what they are and do what they do?
Yeah, so recall that the food service industry was gradually evolving into a customer convenience focus, driven primarily by delivery and takeaway leading up to the pandemic. So there are concepts even prior to that were investing and improving, their digital offerings with online and app ordering, and already starting to optimize their off-premise execution. Those are the ones who seem to be thriving now, and those concepts also had a decent hold already on off-premise. I read an article the other day of Wingstop that they had about 80% of their sales, even leading up to the pandemic, were already off-premise based. So these concepts learned and evolved with the times, and kind of focus on a few things that I'm going to touch on now. But some of the things I'm going to point out that they do really well is that they work on figuring out what their promise times are. And what a promise time is essentially the time the restaurant promises that the order will be ready for pickup. The other aspect that they're doing pretty well, it's identifying where they are getting bogged down in their kitchen, because promise time and kitchen times are highly correlated. So concepts who are doing well in off-premise, they have a good understanding of what their kitchen times are and what the bottlenecks in their kitchen times are, because if a concept is promise time and kitchen time are not synced, what tends to happen is if the kitchen beats the promise time, food's going to sit waiting for pickup, product quality takes a hit, the kitchen falls behind, we now have customers waiting, which is never good, particularly now. You'll get bad scores in off-premise execution. So one fundamental thing that concepts need to work on is understanding what their promise times can be based on what their production times are. So once you're able to understand what the bottlenecks are in your kitchen and how to potentially solve for them, you then move to other areas, because other things that concepts can do now, it's kind of optimize your workstations, whether they're dedicated for carryout or you're trying to convert them into multifunctional spaces that were once dine-in and now carryout. So you want to make sure that you begin to eliminate any excess or additional things on your workstations and have things where they need to be, and really drive the need to set up your stations for carryout, for off-premise. So again, reduce any bottlenecks that may be appearing there. On top of that, once you're moving away from the kitchen, you also have to start to think about how can you limit any waste even after the kitchen in the handoff process. So as you start to think about optimizing your workstations, you also start to think about how to optimize the handoff, particularly now during this time where handing off can be so sensitive. You want to make sure that you begin to eliminate any waste in this process.
Yeah, so workstation design clearly is it's a big area. I can't say how many times I've been to restaurants where I go pick up the food and they're looking for it. They don't know where it is, how to find it. When I get it, it's all wrong. I believe that that's especially the last part of this, the experience has to be very, very keenly designed to do it right. So if you think about, I mean, you talked about the companies that are doing it well, that have gone from good to great, and some started already great. How about the ones that are not? What can they begin to think about it as we come out of this pandemic time? What do they need to do? And perhaps being that we're industrial engineer consultants, what techniques could they apply to help them get their fair share of the market?
Yeah, for sure. And so one of the most commonly associated methods IEs use are time and motion studies, and for good reason. So I would offer to operators who have not yet started to optimize their off-premise execution to really go and understand what may be inhibiting their kitchen from providing faster service. Because again, once you have a good understanding of what your kitchen can produce, you can establish a more realistic and accurate promise time, which I mentioned to you before. It's vital for off-premise delivery.
Yeah, that's very good.
So concepts need to focus on what that promise time is going to be by using time and motion studies, and they can even focus on at the macro level to say, within my kitchen, where are my bottlenecks? And once you move out of the kitchen, you can study at the expo window, what's dragging me down at the expo window? Where are the bottlenecks there? And then you can start to say, now that I know where the bottleneck is, let me work on standardizing this workstation and streamlining this process to be able to really thrive in off-premise, and understanding how far can I get with a multifunctional station, and when do I need to start dedicating real estate and floor space for off-premise? Because again, this is something that those concepts that are doing well now, this is the natural evolution that they started. They started with creating multifunctional stations, and then when off-premise became a bigger chunk of their business, they began to dedicate spaces for carryout and for off-premise.
Right, and I noticed also the propagation of the application of technology. One point to make, Carlos, you and I spoke about some techniques, 5S, continuous improvement in the marketplace. One of the comments that we're seeing is it used to be that great companies were always thinking about how do you change themselves, how do you continue to improve, and it used to be that maybe you could afford not to continue to improve over a period of time. It seems to me where we're headed now is that it's a continuous improvement every day. As you come out of this pandemic, it's almost like you're hitting a moving target to try to drive more sales in off-premise, try to get your inside sales back, manage your labor force. So this whole idea of continuous improvement that you and I have talked about becomes that much more critical as we get out of the pandemic. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, Juan. Concepts should be expecting things to change dynamically, almost week to week, if not faster than that, for the next couple of months in the food service industry. So I think to maximize sales now, I would offer that concepts need to find ways to either involve or reinvent themselves and accept the reality that this may be the beginning of the new normal. And so we're keeping this with this mentality of this ever-changing dynamics. Operators need to learn to adopt and embrace the challenge for continuous improvement and the mentality of continuous improvement, and begin to identify and solve what may be their current bottlenecks in their off-premise execution. Take the risk now by trying and testing and not being so concerned about the solutions being perfect immediately, but take this downtime to really figure out what's going to work well for that brand. And so the mentality of continuous improvement can be used, start standardizing your workstations by using 5S, which is a fancy way of basically setting it up by making sure you have a place for everything and eliminating things that you don't need. Because again, workstations will have to evolve from where they are now to get you to an off-premise executionable standpoint.
Very good, very good. Appreciate all those comments. To the listeners, we hope that Carlos has provided some insights on what successful companies do, what you could do to get your fair share, especially as we come out of this pandemic. No doubt, we're beginning to hear that we're coming out, and companies that were doing good are doing better. So we look forward to continuing to help the industry in that area. By the way, if Carlos wrote an article on off-premise as well, if you want a copy of it, just send us a request to info@profitality.com. I'll make sure to get it to you. So as we close, Carlos, any other thoughts you want to provide to listeners?
Yeah, again, I just find what works right for your brand, knowing that this is something that's likely to stay even after the pandemic. rest assured that dining out will come back, and you want to be able to make sure that you have tried and tested off-premise practices for when that happens, because again, this may be the new normal for a while.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Carlos. And thank you to all the listeners. I want to ask you to have a great day, to stay safe, and go get your fair share of off-premise business. If you have any questions, reach out to us at info@profitality.com, especially the article. And let's all get out of it safely and get our fair share. Thank you, Punch. Take care.
Take care, everyone.